Is Hayward's successor the right man for the job, and how will he come back from today's record $17 billion loss? Of course, massive challenges ahead for Bob Dudley as he tries to rebuild the company's reputation and indeed its business in the US. So let's ask one of Scotland's best-known investors, Colin McLean, who's made his feelings on Hayward's performance no secret. So first of all, give us your reaction to this news that Tony Hayward is set to step down in a couple of months.
Well, I think this has already, been sort of accepted by markets, and BP share price has reacted reasonably well to that and other developments. I think particularly in his performance over the last month or so, but also previously what he did with TNK in Russia, I think Dudley is seen as a very safe pair of hands and a very experienced operator. So I think it's quite reassuring for markets.
So does that mean that you'll be buying back into BP?
Well, what I've been more reassured by even, I think, is the statement that they will raise more assets. I think they've found that they're selling into quite a good market. They've got a good price for the assets they've sold. It doesn't represent very much of earnings at all. And if they could manage to sell peripheral or non-core assets at those levels, it could move to an asset-light model that perhaps would be better than some of the other oil majors. So I think BP is looking more attractive with that.
They've already sold, something like $7 billion worth of assets already to raise funding that they need to pay for the cost of the cleanup. Now they're going to need to raise $30 billion more. Do you think that this could possibly impact on the long-term value of the company?
Well, I think there's less concern perhaps about selling the assets, because they could possibly sell some of these assets without materially impacting earnings. There are certainly downstream assets that help smooth things over the cycle, but are much less useful in terms of returns. But I think they need to demonstrate that they can still grow production and actually grow reserves. So the biggest challenge is really where it goes on from here, and whether or not it can pay a dividend while growing that and growing production in the longer term. So that's the challenge, where it can drill again.
And the other key uncertainty, as well as the dividend, it has been the uncertainty surrounding BP's liabilities, and that's really been keeping its shares under pressure despite the rebound that we've seen in recent weeks. And what do you make of this announcement, BP announcing that they're setting aside $32 billion in provisions for cleanup costs?
Well, I think it's at the top end of current estimates, not estimates of the total liability, but certainly for the provisioning they would make. And I think it's big enough for BP to look like it's drawn pretty much a line under it. I think the eventual liabilities could turn out to be a little bit higher, but it will be drawn out over years. And so I think they want people to have a look at what the balance sheet is going to look like with the bulk of the provisioning made. So I think they've tried to draw a line under it, and it's a bigger provisioning than was expected, but that may allow people to move on and look ahead to earnings more now.
BP still has a lot going for it, haven't they? I mean, I know that you have been somewhat negative about the company with respect to what's happened in the Gulf of Mexico. Obviously, unprecedented environmental disaster. But there are those who are saying that there has been something of an overreaction to events. I mean, for example, they are now planning to drill off the coast of Libya. So even amidst this turmoil, BP is still managing to win new contracts for deep water drilling.
Well, it needs really quite a lot, and I think we shouldn't underestimate the challenge for BP. It had built its strategy very much on having a strong balance sheet, deep water expertise, and particularly knowledge of the Gulf of Mexico, and all of those are impaired now to some extent. So it will be some time, I think, before it gets back on drilling in the Gulf. And growing reserves is going to be much harder.
Yeah.
It also needs to show that it gets safety as well. So that's going to be a challenge for the company too.
Colin McLean, thank you very much indeed for joining us.